Hi, everyone. My name is Dawn Grazan, and I'm the Senior Director of Sponsored Programs and Research at New York Institute of Technology. And today we're going to be doing a grants workshop, and I am joined by Sophie Christman, and I will turn it over to her so that she can do an introduction of herself and an overview of what is going to happen today in the workshop.
Hi,
Sophie?
thanks, John. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. My name is Sophie Christman. Welcome to Grants for Humanities. I'm a visiting professor of humanities at NYIT, and this is my first semester at the Old Westbury campus. I've really enjoyed teaching the students as well as meeting various faculty in the humanities over the past few months. I consider myself a scholar teacher, and I love to do research. I just want to talk a little bit about how I fell into the grants world as a faculty member. In the beginning of my career, I was an adjunct at Long Island University and also at Nassau Community College. And I was lucky enough at Nassau Community College to participate in a federal FIPSE grant for faculty development. And so very early on in my teaching career, I was able to learn pedagogical strategies for active learning and engaging students in the learning process courtesy of a grant. So I've since been a principal investigator on written and managed numerous grants, from small local reading grants for the community to major national initiatives funded by the United States Department of Health and Human Services, the United States Department of Commerce, and the United States Department of Education. I'm a reviewer now for the United States Department of Education, and to date, I've reviewed almost $1 billion worth of discretionary grants from school districts, higher education institutions, and community-based organizations all over the United States. The grants that I've been directly involved in range from getting funded to talk about democracy in a college class to directing a national internet network that provides advocacy for women. Managing two large grants at the United States Department of Education helped me to understand the particular and specific needs of underserved student populations. And I've also managed environmental humanities collaborative grant processes with several institutions of higher education, as well as many others. I've been working with the United States Department of Education to review their discretionary grants, and I've learned many best practice programs that offer faculty development, pedagogical practices, academic and social and emotional support services. And I think it's made me a better researcher and a better teacher. I've been asked today to do a brief overview of grants for the humanities at NYIT. And so today I'm going to give you some nuts and bolts about why we as humanities professors can and should seek and receive funding, and how to go about the process of getting funded. I'll also provide a few local funding resources that you may find helpful when you decide to apply for funding. At some point, if you're interested, I'd also like to follow up with an informal brainstorming session, perhaps in uh, January or February, once we've all come back from break. So, grants for the humanities. Why grants for the humanities? Why sponsored research for the humanities? So there are so many different reasons, right? The idealistic reason is to secure, preserve, and champion the value of the humanities in the United States. A practical reason to get sponsored research for the humanities is that maybe the dean or the provost or the president wants you to apply for grants. An important reason to obtain sponsored research is to supplement your curriculum vitae. A selfish reason is maybe you want funding to work on a book project or to finish a book project that you're passionate about. A practical reason for obtaining sponsored research funding is because you want to supplement your income. There are many different types of sponsored research, and today I'm just going to go over a few of the types that are very practical, very easy peasy to apply for. There are local community organizations that offer sponsored research. There's state-based funding, there are foundations, and then there are federally funded grants. Why grants? Well, your research is important and it deserves to be funded. Your teaching is important and it deserves to be funded. Both your research and your teaching can reach a wider audience. And your research and teaching can also be used as a best practice model by other teachers across the United States. So the grant writing process, part 1, the no fear factor. You have to not have fear when you're applying for grants. You have to maintain an attitude that it's fun to try new things. You have to maintain the attitude that your research is a valuable contribution to the academy and to your colleagues. Many higher education institutions nowadays are providing student research opportunities and faculty-student mentoring in research. Do not be afraid of getting rejected. We've all applied for jobs. We've all applied for conferences, conference presentations. We've all applied for book proposals, what have you, and perhaps once or twice or many more times been rejected. You just have to not be afraid of getting rejected. The grant writing process, part 2. First, you need to, oh, I'm sorry. Is that okay? The grant writing process, part 2. First, if you're interested in doing a grant, you have to brainstorm project ideas. Do you want a grant to teach or do you want a grant to conduct research? Do you want to work by yourself or do you want to collaborate with colleagues and or students at your own institution or at other institutions? You have to decide on a project. Are you interested in doing a digital humanities pilot? Are you interested in doing a medical humanities demonstration project? Are you interested in projects that demonstrate social emotional resilience post-pandemic? You need to demonstrate a clear need for a project that is based both on quantitative and qualitative evidence. Then you need to decide who is going to be a part of your project. Who is going to be a part of the grant writing process, the approval process, and who is going to collaborate with you to carry out this project. You then need to create project goals, objectives, processes, and outcomes. For example, a project goal is to get funded to offer civic engagement modules to the community. Your objective would be perhaps to develop 3 in-person or online events. The process that meets those goals and objectives is to design the events, create a timeline, publicize the timeline, and create a sign-up sheet. The outcome,
if I may, I apologize. If I
of
may
course,
just also interject, is that the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research can always help you with this particular bullet. And forgive me, I thought that you had covered the last item, is that we can always help in putting together some of this for somebody who has not written something like this before. So come to us early and come to us often.
right? That's great, great advice, actually. Contact Dawn at the first thought of starting a grant. And the outcome of such a grant, like a civic engagement grant, could be that you want to serve 50 NYIT students and or faculty and or staff members and or community members on Long Island, or a more general grant to create a digital project online that embodies civic engagement in some way. The grant writing process, part 3, is about time. You need to develop timelines for submission of the grant and its appendices. There is a very detailed type of grant writing processes that Dawn and her staff can help you with. And it's always a good idea to obtain, or even in some cases, pre-write support letters for the project from internal and external constituencies. So if your dean is supportive of your grant, the provost is supportive of your grant, it's always a wise idea to either ask those folks early on to support the project and put a letter in writing for you, or write the letter yourself and actually send it to them and let their staff make any type of editing changes that they would like to make in order to get all of those appendices together. Then you must format the application according to the agency's exact instructions. And this is a pro tip. Try to mimic their language exactly. If they are using certain technical terms and words, try to use those technical terms and words in your own grant application in the narrative. Work very closely with the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research. And last, submit the application on time. So parts of a grant proposal. Dawn put together a really great video that I saw, and I'm going to just steal it from you if you don't mind, Dawn. There are different components to a grant. Not every agency has the same components. Some agencies, particularly in New York State, have really streamlined the grant process, the grant application process. So it is, as I said previously, very easy to apply. In some cases, it could take you 10 minutes to apply for a grant and you could get funded to do your project. So usually with a grant proposal, you have an abstract. We've all written abstracts before for conferences. It's a 50, 100, or 250 word synopsis of the entire project and or an executive summary. There's usually an introduction. There's a statement of need or a problem statement. Why is this project needed? Why is it necessary for you as a scholar or for you as a teacher? Why is it necessary for NYIT as an institution? What are the goals and objectives of this project? What methods are you going to use and how are you going to design this project? How are you going to evaluate the project to see if it was actually successful? Did you end up offering only 2 civic engagement events to the community? And if so, why? And evaluations, I just want to say, are not necessarily, I don't want to use the word punitive, but evaluations, particularly for pilot programs, can be very, very useful in creating best practice programs. So evaluation design is also very important in a grant. Is this grant or is this project sustainable beyond the funded period? So are there opportunities for you to get the grant renewed? Are there opportunities for you to continue this type of research after you submit and obtain the initial grant? What is the budget for the grant? Are you applying for a summer stipend of $5,000 or $10,000 so that you can finish an article or a book chapter? Are you applying for a more elaborate project to help mentor students in their social science research for $25,000? You have to come up with the budget. You have to have a management plan and you have to identify the key personnel who will be a part of the grant. You also have to have a conclusion to the grant and of course bookend why this particular grant is distinguished and addresses the gap or addresses the lack that has not been met by other institutions. And of course you have to include appendices. How to get started. So you need to define the need. You need to define the gap. You need to mind the gap, right, between the train and the platform, right? There has to be a need for the grant. You have to ask yourself, what type of research do I want to conduct? How much grant funding is going to be needed to carry out this project? What goals, objectives, and outcomes do I seek from this grant? Do you want to do a demonstration project? Do you want to finish your book? Do you want to write an article? Do you want to do a teaching project or a teaching demonstration project with students? Do you want to get funded to do an art installation? What benchmarks and timelines will you set up to achieve your objectives? What methods will you use? And how will you evaluate your project for outcomes? Then you start to identify potential funders.
And I would like to just interrupt briefly before you get to your next slide, is that the Office of Sponsored Programs subscribes to an external funding database that can help you identify funders for your research. We can set up a custom search for you in order to get 1 email a week or 1 email a day with all of the identified funders based on keywords and some interests that you have. And then I know that Sophie is going to discuss some of the local grant opportunities now.
Right, so local grant opportunities. The Long Island Community Foundation is a foundation particularly designed for the Long Island community, even though NYIT has a number of different campuses. They offer funds for collaborative grants, they offer funds for STEAM and STEM, they offer grants for mental health, and they offer grants for youth development. In 2020, the Long Island Community Foundation awarded 710 grants worth about $13 $13.5 million. So this is not an insignificant amount of money. Long Island grants also include Cold Spring Harbor Lab. There's a Sidney Brenner Research Fellowship that is available for some of the folks. I know a lot of the teachers at NYIT are engineering, osteopathic, hard science scholars, but there are also some social science grants available at Cold Spring Harbor. And there's an artist in residence grant available at Cold Spring Harbor. There are medical, humanities, and community health grants available at Northwell, believe it or not, in the behavioral sciences unit. And I've included the information here for you in case you're interested in applying for one of those. And there's also the Long Island Arts Alliance. They actually have a grant that's coming up. I think it's due next week, but it's a call for art for the Grand Central Madison Public Art Program in the new Long Island station at Grand Central, and they're seeking student artwork, faculty artwork, what have you, to be put up in the hallways there. Here's a few state-based grants. Humanities New York, right? Humanities folks, Humanities New York has been a champion of the humanities for New York State, and they are a wonderful, fabulous organization. I can't speak highly enough about the way that they have streamlined their grants. They have a number of different grants available. They have what is called community conversations, where if you decide that you would like to have a particular topic you'd like to talk about, like voting or civic engagement or medical humanities or social emotional health post-pandemic, what have you, you can reach out and fill out a very, very easy form in about 10 minutes and get funded to do a community conversation. They also have recurring grants, and they also have annual grants. And let's see. These are just some of the grants and their mission and vision at Humanities New York. The New York State Council on the Arts has $150 million worth of grants available for culture, and they have historically awarded grants to about 2,500 organizations in New York State. And then you have federal grants, right? So within the federal grants, the process of applying for a grant with the federal government is a little bit more sophisticated and uniform across all the different branches and all the different funding sources. Particularly for the humanities, there are wonderful, wonderful grants which range in scope from $5,000 to $50 million available from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the United States Department of Education, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, and the National Endowment for the Arts. And so with all of that information that I've just given you, I hope that you have found it interesting and informative. And I hope that we can continue this conversation at some point soon in the future, so that maybe we can brainstorm some ideas of how we can either work on our own projects or collaborate on various sponsored research projects, because I would really like to do that with all of you. And for more information, I'm going to turn it back over to Dawn Grizan, who's the Senior Director of the Office of Sponsored Programs and Research at NYIT. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you for joining us today on this grant workshop about grants in the humanities. If I may share my screen so that I can share my contact information and my staff contact information, that would be great. So on this screen, it just gives my contact information. Is it currently sharing the correct information?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you'll see that my contact information is here. I'm located in Tower House. Here is my email address and my phone number. And I'm responsible for sponsored programs and research, and also the human protections related to institutional IRB boards. Then we have Eileen Gazzola, who is our senior grants manager and IRB administrator, and she handles all of the internal grants and also the IRB. She is also in Tower House. Here is her phone number and her email address. Sarah Panaccio. She is currently dedicated to grants with the College of Osteopathic Medicine, but there are some times in which there are people from the College of Osteopathic Medicine that collaborate across each one of the divisions across the campus. Here's her email address and phone number. And then Juliet Visveris, who also is the grants manager for the other departments on the academic affairs side of the house, including the College of Arts and Sciences, College of Engineering, School of Health Professions, School of Architecture, and School of Management. She will work with me actively on the grants on that side of the campus. And so we all collaboratively work together in order to make sure that we comply with federal guidelines and state guidelines related to sponsored funding and research and institutional review board human subjects research. So I would like to wrap up this grant workshop. Thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you had any additional comments or any additional information that you would like to share on this workshop.
I am ready to participate in grants and would love to talk with folks and collaborate with folks on many different initiatives at NYIT. So I hope that everyone can contact Dawn at her office, and perhaps we can continue this conversation in January.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us.
Thank you.